Hello everyone, it's your friend, your boy, Jeb like the one only, here with another exciting live stream. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about my day today, August 12th, 2019. Today, I of course did a day of work, as I always do. I've been trying to figure out exactly how I would implement an integration test on my API that I've created. I'm supposed to do some testing for it, but I feel kind of weird because a lot of integration test frameworks are based around you not having finished your program yet. So it's supposed to be a thing where you're like actively working on your program and testing it as you work on it. But I've already finished mine, which means the only type of integration test I can really think of would be to do a big bang integration test, which is essentially where you test all the components of your program working together at once. And I've done that, and I'm now, I guess, trying to figure out, is that all I should do, or should I like change up how I do the testing? But enough about work stuff. Other than that, I've been messaging with Beth as always. I exercised, showered. My niece came over for a little bit. She has a stuffy nose. I hope she feels better soon. I got to see my sister, and I also got to see a family friend who works at the nearby library. Well, it's an understatement to say she works there. She runs the nearby library. I used to volunteer there, and we got to catch up. It's been a while since me and her were able to talk. But yeah, for the most part, that's what I've been up to today. Then Matt said integration, integrating good ideas into your writing. I was talking about work stuff, so integration testing for the API that I've been working on for work. And then Matt said, no, no, no. Yo, Matt, welcome. Let's see, and then give me one moment, Matt. That way I'll be able to see your live chat post on the desktop screen. Because when it's just on the phone, it just kind of fades away. Mm. Matt said, "Have you returned the bracelet?" So I actually did forget about the bracelet. Grace brought that up earlier, after my niece had already left, and then I was like, "Dang, I should have checked that out." Um, But yeah, I forgot all about the bracelet while she was here. Hopefully, the next time she's here, I'll be able to return the bracelet. Mala said, "Hey, yo, Mala, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. Don't forget to smash that like button. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream?" But sadly, Matt, I did forget to return the bracelet, but I will try and remember next time. But yeah, the integration thing that you were asking about, yeah, I was just talking about integration testing for work. But I don't want to bore you guys with work stuff unless you guys happen to want to talk about programming stuff. Then Matt said, Jet, that will haunt you forever. Hopefully not. Oh, but you did bring up my writing. So for Superpower Battles Volume 5, I have finished the first story out of the six stories total. I now need to write the end to the remaining five stories. And hopefully I'll be able to write the ending for at least a couple of them tomorrow. I really don't have a lot of time to write during the day, but I am hoping to this week finally finish and publish Superpower Battles Volume 5. Volume 4 actually was looked at by a guy in the US, because Amazon will show me like when people are reading my books. So Volume 4 was checked out by somebody in the U.S. Thank you kindly. And the Bears Superhero Universe Guide, which is what Volume 5 is based off of, somebody in India read that. So I'm curious if they're going to check out Volume 5 since they read the guidebook. Then Matt said, God. Now it's six stories at once. Stop it. Well, it's the reason why Volume 5 is so many stories is because it's the main villain of the Bear superhero universe versus literally everybody else in that universe. He fights every other major character mentioned in that guidebook, all in one book. So that was what I was going for with that. And then Malice said, "Oh God, the fan fiction." So I'm not currently talking about fan fiction, Malice. I don't know why you brought up fan fiction, but we can talk about it. So, when it comes to fan fiction, did anyone read, not read, but did anyone watch any of the videos that I made about unofficial novels and the video that I made about Kindle Worlds? Because those both have to do with fan fiction. Not any of my own fan fiction, but just fan fiction publishing in general. Matt said, Jet, just make one story that links all those fights together. Well, it kind of is one big story, told episodically. So the six stories follow like an arc where Hexrex, the protagonist of the story and the main villain of the Bear superhero universe, is trying to conquer the entire world and to form it into like his own giant empire. So each story kind of ends with Hexrex traveling to the next location where the story will continue. And that's pretty much how it is. Until you get to the last story where, Hexrex faces off against the last obstacle in his way, and inevitably, something happens. Well, let's just say he meets his destiny, whatever that may be. Matt said rather than make six vignettes that are too brief to be worth investing. I don't think that's necessarily true. Then Matt said, why must you feel the need to make micro stories so much? I don't necessarily think it's the need to make micro stories as much as I feel like I'm only trying to focus on the parts of the stories that I feel like are considerably interesting. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of times when it comes down to it, you don't need a lot of extra fluff for like a superhero story. A lot of what happens comes out in the fight. Like you can miss like a good bit of the stuff before a fight and just read the fight in the end of a lot of superhero stories and get the gist of like what is supposed to be happening. Except instead of it just being a get the gist situation, the stories that I write are formatted in such a way to where you do get the complete story. It's not just getting the gist. Let's see. And then Matt said, you can't boil a story down to its barest bones and expect it to be an enjoyable ride. I don't really think it's its barest bones. Like, instead of it being the meat stripped off of the bone, and you just getting the bone, if anything, I'm saying it's getting straight to the meat. So rather than having to worry about messing with the bone, you're getting right to the meat of the story. Because the fight is kind of where everything kind of comes together. And especially in like old Silver Age superhero stories, um, they definitely show that because they restate a whole bunch of stuff that honestly doesn't need to be restated. It can just be stated for the first time in the fight, and it'd be just enough. Let's see. And then Matt said, it'd be like if you only cared about characters in fighting games as functions. Well, the characters in the fights have their own motivations for being in the fight. That's part of what I like about it so much. Mm. Because the characters are never just fighting for the sake of fighting. I mean, some characters, their motivation is that they fight kind of for the sake of fighting. Well, that's not really true. Most characters who like to fight, um, sorry, I forgot that. I messed up what I was gonna say. Most characters who fight, and that's like their motivation is to fight. Their motivation is normally deeper. Like they normally fight because they enjoy fighting, or they fight because they want to become stronger, or they want to face off against strong opponents. It's stuff like that. But I'm glad that a lot of stories aren't just characters who are like, I just want to fight for the sake of fighting. And I know that I personally don't write characters like that. I don't personally like characters who just want to fight. I like characters who have reasons for why they want to fight. Let's see. So then Matt said, but that isn't how your stories work, Jet. Having straw man motivations for fighting is not the same as having real motivations. I don't feel like my characters have like weak motivations. Matt, I'd highly recommend checking out the Bears Superhero Universe Guide that I published recently. I can email it to you, but I feel like that will help you get an idea of the characters that are going to be featured in Volume 5 and what their individual motivations are. And I think it'd be interesting to hear your reactions to different characters' motivations and backstories. Also, Matt, did you see the video where I had the whole drawing challenge for Hexrex? Because I kind of go over Hexrex's backstory. I think it would be interesting to hear your opinion on Hexrex and his motivations for why he does what he does. So that's also something that you could check out. Matt said, Jet, I'm not going to read a guidebook for a universe crafted by you as a kid and interpreted by your older self. That's just a very specific sentence. Like rather than say you're not interested in reading the Bear Superhero Universe Guide, you're like, or any equivalent type of book done in such a manner. So why, I guess, are you like not down with that? Mm. Matt said, I am also not going to watch that video. Understandable. Would you like me to tell you about Hex Rex and his motivations and everything? And then get your idea of Hex Rex and how you feel about the character? Because that is also an option. That is something that I can do. Mm. Oh, speaking of like stories and superheroes and characters and stuff like that, Beth and I last night for our hashtag text and read read Wonder Woman Rebirth issue number one, and I wasn't a fan. I don't know. I have nothing against Wonder Woman. I actually really enjoyed Wonder Woman's guidebook that they published on her that covers like everything you would want to know about Wonder Woman. And I learned that I really like a lot of Wonder Woman's like storylines and the different characters that are involved in her mythos. Um, but I just feel like whenever I read a Wonder Woman comic, it doesn't really live up to my expectations. Um, like the character's great, her powers are great, her history is great, but I just feel like whenever writers take all those elements and put them together in a story, I just don't really fuck with it. I just feel like if I wrote for Wonder Woman, I would write Wonder Woman differently. Let's see. Matt said, Jet, you are piecing together disparate ideas that were crafted by a child's mind, which might not be the most reasonable or actually compelling, and gluing it together with the bad writing, sensibilities of your current self. I don't know. So, Matt, do you feel like people shouldn't try and write stories based off of like childhood things that they make up? Excuse me. Because I think a lot of cool stuff has come out of creators making things as kids and then building upon them over time and then having their like version they publish as an adult. Like Savage Dragon is a cool example. Ryan said, "Hi Jet." Yo Ryan. And Zachary Fox Kitty said, "Hey Jen chat." Yo, I don't know why I said your full name instead of just saying Kevin. Yo, Kevin and Ryan, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? And do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? Matt said, "What did you say? I was gone." Matt, I don't know why you do that, where you'll like post a thing and then you'll dip out and come back. Kevin said, I've seen the Dora live action movie and I enjoyed and liked it. Well, Matt, you and I need to go see that Dora live action movie. Kevin has spoken. Matt and Ryan, when are we going to go see that Dora live action film? Come on, we gotta. Kevin says that it was good. Matt put dot 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 no. Oh, come on, Matt. You're telling me you wouldn't go to the theater with me and Ryan and go check out Dora, 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 the Explorer? Oh, we could get the best seats in the house. I can almost guarantee we could get the best seats in the house. I don't think a ton of people are going to be going to see this movie. Uh, I feel like it could be an interesting experience. Matt said, I wonder why. Probably to make room for the homies, make sure that we have a nice spot to enjoy the film. But Matt, in regards to the post that you put earlier, I feel like it's cool when people have characters they created when they were a kid, and then when they get older, they finally publish stories based off of those characters that they made up as a kid. Kevin said, Matt, you get a girl to go with you and see the movie easy. I think you meant to say see the movie easy. That's what I'm interpreting that as. Then Matt said, Jet, that was very sarcastic. And then Kevin says, go with. Understandable. And then Matt said, no. Matt is refusing to go see Dora the Explorer. Matt, you're telling me you don't want to see a CGI monkey with some shoes on? Ryan said Island of Lost Dreams. Oh, Ryan, do you think they should have made it a Dora the Explorer movie like they did? Or do you think instead they could have just made a movie called Island of Lost Dreams and used things similar to Dora the Explorer without throwing the Dora the Explorer name brand on it? I feel like there are a good number of people who may not go see the Dora the Explorer live action movie specifically because it says Dora the Explorer on it, but otherwise would be like, oh, it's like an adventure film. It's like a teen adventure film. Yeah, I might hit that up. You know what I mean? But I also think that there are plenty of young people who either feel nostalgic about Dora the Explorer, like they used to watch it as a kid, or they are just young and are just familiar with Dora the Explorer from just being young and having watched it and have an interest in seeing the movie. So I get that there's like a market for it, but I'm curious if they could have reached a wider market by not slapping Dora the Explorer on it. It could have just literally been called Island of Lost Dreams. Let's see. Then Matt said, I hate the concept of almost all CGI Disney movies. Dora is not going to change my mind. Dora the Explorer is not a Disney property. If anything, I think she's probably owned by Viacom. And then he said CGI slash live action. So you hate CGI slash live action in general? I feel like that's not accurate, Matt. There are actually plenty of films that use CGI for just like normal stuff. I think you mean specifically when they have like over the top CGI or like CGI characters, maybe. But a lot of movies now don't even use a lot of real sets. A lot of stuff is like CGI'd in. Then Ryan said, Spy Kids 2, Island of Lost Dreams. Oh, Dora and the Lost City of Gold. Yeah, if instead they had called it Lost City of Gold, do you think more people would have maybe went to see it, or that it would have appealed to a wider audience? Maybe not necessarily that more people would go see it, but that like more people would be interested in seeing it. Uh, Ryan gooted the fuck out of me when he said Island of Lost Dreams. I guess that was Spy Kids too. Got me. Matt said, nor am I going to get oh, sorry, I thought you said jailbaited. Going to get jebaited into marketing ploys targeting my childhood. So Matt's like, miss me with that nostalgia. Let's see. Kevin said, Dora isn't from Disney, for one, but from Nickelodeon. Get your facts straight. That's what I was telling Matt as well. When I mentioned that Dora is like a Viacom property, or at least I believe she's a Viacom property, is because Nickelodeon is a part of Viacom, which is like a bigger company. Then Matt said, I know that. He said the point is that these movies are targeting the nostalgia of people for their marketing. And then Ryan said, more people are going for that Dora brand. And I do think that's true. I just think even if they dropped the Dora part from it, right? And they were just like Lost City of Gold and they marketed it well, I just feel like it would have been like, oh, like this is just like a teen adventure movie. And I feel like certain people would just go see it from the concept of it being like this could be good. I think there are certain people who will see that Dora is put on it and they're like, "Oh, it's like a licensed film based on a children's animated series. Probably not going to be good." There are people who are probably dodging it specifically because it is Dora. But I feel like if they just saw like a trailer for it, they may be like, "Oh, well, without any of the Dora tie-in stuff, maybe it just might be good." I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Then Matt said it is lazy. Kevin said I don't like the live action trend either, but not all of the live action movies will be bad. I don't think, like for one, I don't have anything against live action CGI movies or anything like that. I don't like it when something that doesn't feature a lot of human characters gets the weird live action CGI treatment. Because I don't really get the point. If there aren't a lot of people in it, then why do it? Because live action I think fits better when you have like a human driven story that you're then trying to adapt into like a film. But when your main character is an animal and they're surrounded by animals for 2 hours, but they're like talking animals, I don't know why that needs to be a live action movie. It doesn't really make sense. Matt said, Jet, you say that about anything. Yes, anything can be a must watch if it is marketed well. That doesn't mean that we assume the better of things. I think people assume the better of things depending on whether or not a brand is or is not associated with a property. For example, when you. Man, I had an example and then I didn't have an example. Okay, now I'm back. I got an example. So imagine a Tomb Raider esque video game came out, and they were like, "This isn't like your grandpa's Tomb Raider," and it seemed like it had like nice graphics, but not like the best in the world, and the gameplay seemed pretty solid. But again, it's not blowing anybody off their feet. It just seems like if you like adventure games, stuff like Tomb Raider, that you'd probably like that game, and you were an adventure game fan, that you would probably pick up the game that I just described. Now, if I said that game that I just described is the Dora the Explorer movie tie-in game, right? You'd be like, ooh, a licensed movie game. You'd be like, my expectations are kind of immediately lower because it is tied into that property. So I feel like they probably didn't put as much care into making it than if it wasn't. So I'm probably gonna avoid that like the plague, even though it could potentially just be like a okay adventure game. But if it was just marketed as an okay adventure game with no affiliation to Dora, you might have got me if I love Tomb Raider esque adventure games. And I feel like it's the same thing with this movie. Let's see. Then Ryan said, late stage Disney is problematic with its movies. Um, Tell me more, Ryan. I feel like that could be interesting, potentially, like that discussion. Matt said, you want to know why this type of marketing messes with things? Look at Sonic Unleashed. From what I've heard, Sonic Unleashed is half of a good game. I've heard that the daytime stages where you just play a Sonic running around are like some of the best 3D Sonic stages, like period. And then I've heard that the Werehog stuff is repetitive and it's just kind of like a button masher, and that the platforming for the Werehog stages is kind of gross, and that overall the Werehog stages just kind of ruin the experience. But I think I would be interested in seeing like a Sonic Unleashed daytime edition or something, like just something I could buy on like the PlayStation Store that was just the daytime levels. I've heard they're really good. Let's see. Matt said the game would be looked at much more positively if it wasn't a Sonic game, though. Hmm. Matt, I think you're starting to see where I'm coming from. Because I understand where you're coming from with the whole idea that Sonic Unleashed is kind of weird because the Werehog parts don't really fit with Sonic. But if you didn't have those expectations of what a Sonic game should be because it isn't a Sonic game, it's just trying to be its own thing, that people might have liked it more. So I understand where you're coming from. I still think that doesn't take away from the issues that the Werehog segments had in general. Because from what I've heard, the combat in the Werehog segments are like kind of boring. Like there is a combo system, but there's no real incentive to use it, and it's not particularly interesting or engaging, and that a lot of the fights in the Werehog stages are repetitive, and that the platforming wasn't done well. I feel like if the Werehog stages were just better in general, that people would have been more receptive to Sonic Unleashed. Like if the combat didn't feel repetitive and the combo system was really engaging and the platforming was like for like a 3D platformer, I think people would be like, yeah, it's just a pretty solid game. I think people would just really like it. Then Matt said, at least not as negatively, if Sonic Unleashed was like its own thing. And then Matt said, Dora is lazy because you're meshing premises that have no reason to be mashed together just for marketing. So, mashing premises together. Are you talking about how the Dora the Explorer movie is kind of like trying to be a Tomb Raider kind of thing? And then Matt said, let me ask you this. Who wanted this? So there was actually like a parody Dora the Explorer live action trailer thing that came out years ago. I think it was like a college humor thing on YouTube. And I remembered seeing that and thinking that it was like a funny idea and that I wouldn't mind seeing something like that. And lo and behold, it has manifested itself into reality. There we just actually have it. Now the trailer thing that came out was kind of more like silly and raunchy. I don't think the actual Dora the Explorer film was going to be like that. I do remember when this was originally announced, they were talking about how a company that's affiliated with Michael Bay is going to be working on it, and I was like, oh my goodness, that sounds like it could be quite interesting. So I don't know. It really depends on what they did with Dora the Explorer. I feel like they probably did do more or less a cash grab, but I think I would have been genuinely impressed if it was just like a solid movie. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the film was just okay. Like it wasn't something that knocked you off your feet, but it wasn't bad by any means. Let's see. Then Matt said, "You can't say those two things are related to each other." I don't know about that, Matt. You can there can be things that build up hype for an eventual product that comes out. For example, there was like a film test for Deadpool way before the Deadpool movie came out, maybe like years before, and that became very popular on YouTube. And then that's what kind of spurred Deadpool into production. So it went from, hey, we think this just might be a cool idea. This isn't actually a full featured thing. We're just like experimenting with what it would be like to, oh, people seem to really vibe with that and want more with that. We should actually make that into, oh, now it's just actually being produced. I feel like the same thing can happen even if you don't make the initial thing. So even if you don't go out of your way to make that thing that builds interest, you can still see that thing be made, see people consume it and want more, and then be like, oh yeah, we can do that. You know what I mean? So I could see them possibly being related. Kevin said, I will argue, Matt, that the movie trend for prequel, sequel, a new movie to an already published IP is far worse than the live action trend that is currently going on. Interesting. Um, so I I'm not sure if I really mind the whole prequel sequel make a spinoff to an IP thing. I think it all has to do with quality. It really depends on how good all of those things are. Like I wouldn't be upset if a popular movie franchise I really liked as a kid suddenly got like a sequel or a prequel or a spinoff if it was good. You know, like I wouldn't be like, "Oh man, I can't believe they're messing with no." It's like they can do what they want. They like own the IP. It's just up to like whether or not it's up to snuff, which is a subjective thing. You know, whether or not you feel like it's quality. So I don't mind that for real. Then Ryan said, like a pilot. Yeah, like a pilot. Except I'm also mentioning the idea of the pilot, like a type of thing like a pilot that could be made by someone else, but then the actual show is made by different people. You know, stuff like that. Then Matt said, but wouldn't live action also be within the trend of making a movie in an established, excuse me, IP, thus making it double duty bad? Double duty bad. Matt 2019. That is a real quote. Kevin said, for example, look at the Ghostbusters and Men in Black failure, and a joke of a movie, and many more to come. So I haven't seen Men in Black, like Men in Black International. I've seen 1 through 3. Like I've seen the original trilogy. I'm interested in seeing International. I heard it didn't knock anybody's socks off. Like I've heard that no one was like, "Oh man, this is like the best movie," but I don't think people hated it necessarily. Did they? I mean, I can always look at Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, which isn't the best thing to use. Oh, it's a 22%, 5.6 on IMDb, 1.5 on Roger Ebert. I don't know what that is, but they did not like it. 1.5 out of 4. Mm. Also, for that Ghostbusters movie, I haven't seen it, but I heard that they use matte breaks, and I kind of want to see it just for the matte breaks. For those of you who don't know what a matte break is, it's where the aspect ratio is cut off to where they have black bars at the top and bottom of the screen at all times. And then you have semi 3D effects that occur where characters, objects, and other things will kind of break out of the border to where they'll overlap the border. So, because your brain will look at the black bars and say those are the limits to the screen, when the people in like lasers and stuff like that break past the black border, it gives you a pseudo 3D effect where you're like, wait, how is it reaching through the screen? Kind of thing. It's one of my new like favorite special effects to kind of look at. There's a cartoon called Super Dinosaur that uses it actually a good bit for comedic and action moments. And I think because I'm such a fan of matte breaks, I kind of want to see Ghostbusters, or at least just scenes from it where they do the matte break thing. I think that's a cool idea. Ryan said, like a proof of concept? Yeah, like a proof of concept. Matt said, but those are both live action franchises. Well, he's just talking about examples of where they're doing additional movies as a part of an established IP. Then Matt said, I would be more shocked if they made an animated sequel. Men in Black does have an animated series, and believe it or not, Men in Black was originally based on a comic book. I'm not sure if a lot of people are aware of that. Kevin said, watch When Cats Be a Failure, and The Mask and Back to the Future 4, which I'm not looking forward to. Hold on. Is there a new The Mask thing coming out? Because you said that, and I was like, ooh. Oh, hey. So there's a news article from Forbes.com. The Mask creator has a female comedian in mind for a possible reboot. I don't mind that at all, because the mask is like a thing that you get that turns you into a character. So you can easily make a reboot, and it's just a woman finds the mask. Like that's not even like a end of the world thing. I'd be fine with that. I wouldn't be like, oh, they didn't use Jim Carrey. It's like whatever. Yeah, it's just an object that turns you into essentially a god. So yeah, I actually would love to see something like that. That seems pretty cool. I'm gonna actually post that link to that news article. Let's see. Matt said, sometimes certain franchises should just stay dormant forever, not because they're bad, but because they did what they needed to do with their ideas. I don't necessarily think that franchises need to stay dormant forever, ever, to be honest. It's just not really how fiction works at all, especially with how public domain works. Like, eventually, once a lot of the things that we're very familiar with in the modern day run out of like whatever their copyright terms are, like they pass that copyright ceiling, we're gonna just see a lot more of it. Like people are just gonna start just using it whenever because they can. So even if all of your favorite properties right now made their like penultimate, this is the end of whatever it is, like in a few, in a long time for us, but in a few years in the grand scheme of things, all those things will just come back because it'll just be free reign. Anybody can write about it or like make their own version of it, so then everybody will. It's just kind of what happens. That's why you get so many Robin Hood movies and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that they're gonna be like the best thing ever, but once it gets to the point where anybody can make it, anybody make like everybody makes it more or less. Let's see. Then Matt said, likewise, certain franchises should stay within the realms that they are most potent in. Well, I feel like in certain cases it's harder to tell if something would be better as one medium or another, especially since it's very subjective. Some people may be like live action Lion King's like the best movie they've ever seen. And other people would be like live action Lion King is like the worst movie they've ever seen. But because it's entirely subjective, it's really hard to figure that kind of thing out. Kevin said, sadly, yes, they are going woke with the mask, which I can care less. But ruining the series and making Back to the Future 4 woke, yeah, no. Thank you, fuck that. He said, don't ruin my childhood, Hollywood. So, I don't think making the mask a female comedian is making the mask woke. Like I said, the whole thing in the mask is that it's the mask of Loki, and if you put on the mask, you gain the powers of Loki, so you become like a god of mischief, and then you can just kind of use those powers to do whatever you want. So the idea of a woman finding the mask isn't like the craziest thing I've ever heard. It just sounds right. If anybody can find and put the mask on, that would also include a woman. So I'm not hurt by that. Now for Back to the Future 4, I never was super into the Back to the Future franchise anyways, but I do think it would be interesting to see some kind of modern interpretation of Back to the Future. I don't really think I'm against that. Now, Back to the Future 4, I think is the weird part. I kind of would prefer if they were like Back to the Future, insert subtitle here. Only because 4 is such a direct tie-in to like this is a part of the bigger thing. Like this is a part of the trilogy. Also, technically, they don't have to call it Back to the Future. That's another situation where they could very easily just be like, it's a time travel movie, but it's not necessarily Back to the Future, and they'd probably get less flack on it. That being said, it could be good, and people could love it. And you could even see. Here's another thing. I should have mentioned this earlier. I feel like a lot of movies, by the way, could get away with being like, this is inspired by Back to the Future, called a different thing, has a lot of similar elements to Back to the Future, but everything is like called a different thing. It's made by the company that owns the rights to Back to the Future, so then they don't have to step on their own toes on anything. Like they can reuse ideas and they're not hurting anybody's copyright. And then they can just throw it out there, see if it does well, and if it does well enough, they can always just retroactively be like, "Oh, people love that movie. Oh, it's just a part of Back to the Future now." Like you don't have to put all your eggs in the basket immediately. You could very easily just have a movie and just be like, it's heavily inspired by such and such. And then if people hate it, it's its own thing. And then if people love it, you could potentially go, yeah, this is a random Comic Con panel. Uh, Such and such takes place in the Back to the Future universe, and then people go, oh, I love that movie. Oh, that's so great. You could very easily just do that. Let's see. So where am I at? Matt said, but it being free reign doesn't mean that it should be kicked awake again. But that's pretty much just what's going to happen. I mean, that's a part of public domain. Then Matt said, it's specifically because free reign will eventually occur and devour any form of quality that these franchises shouldn't be revived from their graves. I don't think that's true. I feel like there are a lot of modern interpretations of old classics that end up being made that are actually pretty good. And that's how we end up getting a lot of the stuff that we have today. Is from people essentially writing their version of some older thing, putting their own twist on it, and slapping a different name. That's just for a good bit of things. Let's see.
Did you know that The Lion King is based on
Hamlet?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I finished your sentence.
Yes. That's an example of what you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm. That is true. Let's see. Kevin said there is more to a character than their gender. I am getting. I think he meant sick. I'm getting sick of this politics identity stuff. I don't think it's a politics identity thing. I don't really understand where you're coming from on that. Ryan said, didn't a woman have the mask in the comics? I imagine the comics have actually had multiple different characters be the big head killer, which is the name of the mask in the comics. Because the mask in the comics is a murderer. They have cartoon powers in normal life, and they can kind of do anything, and they like kill people. Not all of the versions of the mask are a murderer, but Big Head Killer definitely is, which I think is the original version of the mask. Like the mask comics are supposed to be more violent and raunchier, and the movies were like a toned down version of that. So I think there has been a woman who's worn the mask in the comics before. Kevin said no, Ryan. Kevin, are you sure? Then Ryan said, why have a political reaction to identity stuff? I do think it's not a political thing. I don't think whenever they make a traditionally male character female, it's not a political correctness thing like some people say. Like it's not the politically correct version of whatever it is. It's just a different take on it. And I feel like there is potential for you to do that in creative and interesting ways. And I don't think it's infringing on anything or like damaging anyone's childhoods. You know, it's just like an idea and they're putting it out there. I don't think it's necessarily bad. Let's see. Matt said retroactively making things part of an existing franchise sounds disgusting. I don't really think it's that bad, Matt. If anything, I think it's the best way to do stuff like this, because otherwise you end up with putting all your eggs in your basket and just hoping that people like whatever that movie is. You know what I mean? Or you could do something where you play around with it, you keep it loose enough to where it could or could not be a part of that franchise. Say it's inspired by it, you get a lot less flack. See if people like it. If they don't, it's its own thing. If they do, you can be like, yeah, that movie ties into the greater universe, but it doesn't have like a name. So it's not like, oh, this movie we made inspired by Back to the Future, it's technically Back to the Future 4. Like, no, you don't have to say that. But you can say stuff like, yeah, it does take place in the same universe or whatever. You can just do that like retroactively. And then people would just be like, oh, that's dope. Let's see. Kevin said, I don't like stuff like that being forced in media in general where it doesn't belong. I don't feel like it's necessarily being forced. And then Kevin said political correctness type stuff. I don't think it's political correctness. Ryan said, yeah, the mask has been worn by a woman in the comics. Makes sense, because it's just a mask. Anybody can find it, anybody can put it on. Beth said, hashtag dad reveal number 2. Dad did come on a moment ago and speak for a little bit, but he wasn't on screen. Also, Beth, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? And don't forget to smash that like button. Truly appreciate it. Let's see. Beth said, and I knew The Lion King was based on Hamlet. As did I. Kevin said, maybe in modern day comics, Ryan, but not in the original. I guess my question to you, Kevin, would be, did you read the original Mask comics? And is there even a modern day Mask comic? It's so old. You know, I don't even remember the last time someone talked about the mask in any modern day context other than today with us talking about the movie. you know, the last time I was into the mask, it was like the animated series. I'd be interested in reading some of the mask comics, but I personally haven't. I just know a little bit about them. Beth said, I enjoy the idea of gender bends of characters. People do that in the cosplay world all the time. What are your thoughts on gender bend cosplays? So when it comes to gender bend cosplays, I have nothing against that. I think it's interesting. Um, a lot of times for gender bend cosplays, I like to see characters go a little bit farther. Not characters. I like to see cosplayers go a little bit farther than wearing the same outfit, but being a different gender. I kind of like seeing certain elements of the outfit be changed in order to try and make it look more like the male or female version of it. You know what I mean? Um, but that's not to say that like cosplay can't look cool if it's just someone of the opposite gender wearing the same outfit. But I kind of like seeing the outfit be changed to just seem more comfortable on whoever's wearing it. You know what I mean? And then Beth said, I understand where you're coming from. I am following. I'm glad that you vibe. Also, Beth, so I saw your message that you put on Facebook Messenger about Batmite and like the type of story you would write for like a Batmite comic. For those of you who don't know, Batmite is a DC character who is an imp from the fifth dimension where imagination becomes reality. He, whenever he's in our world, is essentially a reality manipulator who can do anything he wants. But he's obsessed with Batman, and he's kind of a Batman fanboy. So I asked Beth if she could write any Batmite like story. What Batmite story would she write? And she said maybe Batmite destroys our world and sends it to the fifth dimension. Excuse me. Now, I don't know how I feel about Batmite destroying our world because he's normally a good guy, so I couldn't see him like breaking it. But the concept of him sending it to the fifth dimension, I actually think is really cool. I could see that being not just like one comic, but like an event. And it would essentially be an event where the entire Earth is trapped in the fifth dimension, and anything and everything that people imagine just becomes real. So now you have superheroes dealing with a world where literally everyone's like greatest dreams and worst nightmares are coming alive and people have to deal with it. I feel like it would be a nice way to have like an introspective look at a lot of characters and to see how they would react to their nightmares being manifested, as well as seeing some of their hopes and dreams come alive. I just think that would be like a really cool concept. And then over the arc of the event, you have our heroes trying to figure out a way to send the Earth back to the fourth dimension. Let's see. So Matt said, Jet, I can't believe you hated all the E3 2019 games except for the two Star Wars games. It's not necessarily that I hated all the other games. None of the other games really stood out to me. What are some of the games that you think I should have been like super impressed by? I saw some gameplay for the Final Fantasy VII remake, and I was like, yeah, that looks okay. I probably would never play it. I have a PS4. It's not like I can't play it. It's just I don't know. Like it didn't look not entertaining, but it's just I don't have any interest in it. And that was more or less my reaction to that. I was hyped for Skyrim Blades, and then they were like, Skyrim Blades is not gonna work for your phone. You don't have a new phone. It's not. Don't even think about it. Remember when we told you it was gonna be on every platform, not your phone? And I was like, oh well, guess I don't care about Skyrim Blades anymore. You know. But E3 2019 didn't really knock me off my feet. Avengers game, barely saw any gameplay of it. There's some trailers. Ooh, Captain America looks like he's gonna die early on based on trailers. Ooh, new Avengers game I don't care about. Aw, man. You know, nothing really blew me away at this year's E3. Kevin said, I enjoy gender bend characters in anime, cosplay, and so on. But if not done well, it will be awful. The goal of any gender bend character should be for them to have a personality, a story, not to be bland and be like, hey, look at me, I'm the opposite sex with no character whatsoever. Good writing, personality, character development, story, and so on goes a far way. So, the way I feel about your comment, Kevin, I feel like you're implying that just by hearing stuff like the Mask Creator has a female comedian in mind for a reboot, you immediately assume that it won't have any character and that the writing won't be good and that they won't have a personality. I don't really think we can jump to those conclusions until, the movie comes out and we see it, and then we can know whether or not it'll be good because we would have seen it and we'd have an opinion on it. I just feel like it's too early to jump the gun and just assume that because the gender of the character is different that it's just going to be bad for some reason. Matt said, nearly all the good ones were what you should have been hyped for, not the two Star Wars games. What do you mean nearly all the good ones? What a vague sentence. What are the E3 2019 games that you feel like would have worked to my taste and been like games that I would have been like hyped for? They showed a fucking mythology open world adventure game trailer that had like a pretty colorful art style and like no gameplay, and the trailer was incredibly short, and we actually don't know what kind of game it'll be like. Whoa, oh man, oh, I'm so blown away by actually nothing. Um, there was a short little clip where they were like Breath of the Wild 2, and I'm like, whoa, also not gameplay, also pretty much nothing. I don't know. I don't really get hyped for nothing most of the time. A lot of times I like seeing gameplay, um, and I like seeing games that remind me of stuff that I already like. Now, Psychonauts 2, hold up. Psychonauts 2 was an interesting announcement, and I would have been incredibly hyped. For one, we already knew Psychonauts 2 was out before E3 2019, so it wasn't a real reveal. You know, it's not like we didn't know it was coming. If you follow Double Fine Productions on YouTube, they've been doing videos about it for ages. The thing about E3 2019, probably one of the biggest disappointments at E3 2019, Double Fine Productions was like, yo, we got bought by Microsoft. Psychonauts 2 is going to be only on Xbox consoles. Fuck everybody else. Hey, thanks for watching. And it's like, what? Okay, cool. You know, that would have been one of the big things I was hyped for, if it was actually coming out for anything that I owned. Um, Now, if Psychonauts 2 came out on Google Stadia, I'd be pretty happy, actually. Um, I've been hyped for PlayStation Dreams or whatever. Well, Dreams, which is a game that's going to be on PlayStation. Um, I don't think we heard anything new from E3 2019 about it. So, okay. Nothing new, cool. Cool, living life. Living life. Living like Larry. Yeah. Let's see. Matt said Skyrim is bad, so please stop with that Blade stuff. I thought Skyrim Blades would actually be pretty interesting, man. I don't know. I was kind of hyped for it. Matt said also Captain America dying early is very obviously just the game hiding him until he is absolutely needed. So you're like, ooh, Cap's gonna come back later. And I'm like, ooh, probably not. We'll see. They could very easily just not bring him back and just have like a Captain America function character. Just someone who does something similar. I could even see Captain America coming back by name and costume alone, but it literally is just somebody else. Because they can just kind of do whatever they want. But if they're gonna kill him, I think they should like actually kill him. I don't think they should like sneak kill him. There's not really a reason to, for the dramatic twist. It's kind of your own universe. Just let him be dead if that's gonna be a significant point for like the story. Matt said he is almost certainly not dead. Mm-hmm. Okay. But he could be though. Then Matt said Nintendo had a constant stream of good reveals and additional trailers. I do think Nintendo definitely understands how to do things like E3 very well. Um, Unlike I feel other companies who don't really get the point. I feel like Nintendo is pretty good about saying, here is a game. Here's what you can do in the game. Here's when the game will come out. Sometimes even a price. And it's like, oh wow, yeah, that's what I want. If you're gonna tell me about new games, like actually just tell me about new games. That's great. Kevin said, so is assuming such sexist? If so, I am not trying to come across as such. Um, I, I don't think so. I did so. I would say it's kind of short-sighted. Some may even go as far as to say ignorant. Sexist, I wouldn't say so, because the assumption is that even if it was a female character that was turned into a dude, that you would still have that same reaction. So that doesn't make it sexist. If you were like, only when dudes are turned into women, then I'd be like, oh well, that's sexist. But if you're like, it's they're gender bending and they're not giving them personalities, well, that's not sexist. That's just kind of not true. Like you can't say that's like a true thing for all cases, but it's not sexist. Let's see. Matt said Gods and Monsters does not have me grasped at all. He said, Jet, many of the trailers had actual gameplay. Don't pretend like the majority of the games had no gameplay trailers. I feel like Nintendo did a good job. I don't think everybody did a good job on the trailers. Oh, but Matt, you still haven't hit me up with games that you think I'd be super hyped for from this year's E3. Like stuff that I should be like, oh yeah, this is coming out. Oh man, like Psychonauts 2 isn't coming out for Sony consoles. If anything, that's just disappointing. Skyrim Blades isn't coming out for my phone. That's disappointing. Um, but we're getting a new Star Wars game that looks pretty good, and another new Star Wars game that I would argue is even better, the fucking Lego Star Wars game. I'd buy that before the other Star Wars game. Except they don't come out in that order, I don't think. I think the new um, Jedi Fallen Order game comes out before Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. Just kind of disappointing. I would have preferred that to have been reversed. Let's see. Do, 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 do. Matt said, I agree that no gameplay should equal no hype for a trailer, but so much of what was at E3 was hype, even if you didn't have initial investment in it. Final Fantasy VII Remake has me hyped, and I don't even own a PS4, nor did I play the original. I thought the gameplay looked okay. I just don't think it's something that I'd ever play. You know what I mean? I just don't see myself going out of my way to buy it. It's similar to like Kingdom Hearts 3. You know, um, I liked the Kingdom Hearts manga. I used to read that in like high school, and I seemed to only read the odd number book, so I didn't even read like all of it. And I got so into the manga that I bought like Kingdom Hearts 1 for like PlayStation, and I like never really played it. I never even got past like the first part of that game. And then 3 came out, and I was seeing a lot of gameplay videos for 3. And I was like, wow, it looks like very flashy and colorful, and I think the Toy Story world looks awesome. I don't care about any of the other worlds really except the Toy Story world. And there's a Big Hero 6 world. Oh, Big Hero 6 is cool. Um, then I hear from people, yo, the Big Hero 6 world is garbage, and the Toy Story world actually is really good. And I'm like, oh man, that Toy Story world though, uh, not worth buying a whole game. It's for like one section of a game, so I just didn't really care. Let's see. So if Kingdom Hearts 3 didn't get me by looking like something that I might be interested in, and I actually had some past investment in at least the story, I'm not gonna go like, oh, Final Fantasy 7. Oh, you know what I mean? It's not enough really to grab me. Matt said Nintendo has a whole line of things if you would just buy a Switch. I'm not really interested in Nintendo Switch. Streaming and gaming go hand in hand for me. I don't play video games when I'm not streaming video games. That's a fact. So because of that, I just don't have any real interest in getting a console that doesn't have some built-in streaming capability. That's part of the reason why I think Google Stadia is going to be so good. Not only does it have built-in streaming, but it also has stuff specifically for letting fans be able to play a game with you. And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, you want to like post like a screenshot of your game? You want to just get a clip and upload it to YouTube? Do you want to start live streaming immediately? Do you want to like play with people in the live chat with like a click of a button? They can just suddenly be a part of your game. All that's in Stadia. And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that just sounds great. And they're like, yeah, and if you use a special version of Google Stadia, then you don't have to actually put any money into it other than to buy the games. Because Google Stadia has multiple tiers, and if you do the free tier, they're like, buy the game, play it whenever you want. There are certain features that you won't have access to that are like quality of life stuff, but they're quality of life things that you wouldn't care about if you didn't have any of those things. Like, you don't get surround sound for the games that you're streaming. It's like I stream out of one TV. It doesn't matter. You don't get like 4K quality game, you only get like HD, and it's like I don't have a 4K monitor. Like, I don't care. So I'm actually more hyped for Google Stadia and the concept of being able to just stream my games while streaming my games. I just think it's pretty dope. I just think it's better. Let's see. Let's see. Matt said, I can tell you that the two Star Wars games are not above and beyond everything else that was at E3. You didn't even care about Star Wars until Han Solo, and that is you focusing on a specific element. You are right. I did not care about Star Wars until the Han Solo film. I actually did really enjoy that, and that made me think about Star Wars in a different way. And that's kind of why I've been vibing more with Star Wars recently, specifically because of some of the elements of the Star Wars mythos that I just wasn't originally aware of or thinking about. Um, that doesn't mean that I can't like Star Wars. Oh, we hit an hour. Thank you guys all for watching. If you guys like this video, make sure to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ding ding ding, ring the notification bell to be notified whenever we do these live streams. Thank you all once again for tuning in. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black the One Only, logging out. Peace, guys.